Clarence Williams III's story begins with mystery, loss, and silence. Born on August 21, 1939, in Harlem, his childhood was marked by events so unusual that they shaped the way he carried himself for the rest of his life. When he was only 6 months old, his mother disappeared without a trace. Family members rarely spoke about her, and in time, her presence was erased from photos, records, and stories. It was almost as if she never existed. His father, Clarence Clay Williams Jr., was a musician who struggled to make a living as swing music faded out of popularity. Because he traveled so often, the young Clarence was raised mostly by his grandparents. Living with them came with unique experiences, especially since they owned a funeral home. For most children, death is something hidden, but Clarence grew up walking past bodies under white sheets and seeing coffins lined up after tragedies. Instead of being frightened, he absorbed these images and they became part of his inner world. By the age of 14, he had already witnessed enough grief and violence to understand the difference between innocence and guilt. This early exposure gave him a seriousness that later appeared in his acting. Casting directors often said his stare seemed radioactive, and co-stars admitted they sometimes felt unsettled by the weight he carried in his eyes. The boy who grew up among shadows was already preparing for roles that would shake Hollywood. Before becoming an actor, Clarence was a teenager searching for a way to survive in Harlem. At one point, he even worked as a runner for the underground lottery, collecting bets and risking arrest. He was quick, clever, and careful, skills that would later help him as a performer. His life changed one day in 1957 when he stopped by the YMCA to see his sister. By chance, he wandered into a basement theater where a rehearsal was taking place. The director asked him to read some lines, and Clarence surprised everyone by delivering them with natural power. That night, he was invited onto the stage, where young actors like James Earl Jones and Cicely Tyson happened to be in the audience. From that moment on, Clarence's future shifted. He joined the American Negro Theater and found purpose in acting. But his path was not simple. He was drafted into the Army, where he joined the famous 101st Airborne Division and trained as a paratrooper. The discipline he learned how to breathe, wait, and strike would later define his performances. After his service, he returned to New York and soon earned a Tony Award nomination for his role in Slowdance on the Killing Ground. His style was intense, controlled, and unlike anything audiences had seen before. Critics compared his presence to neon humming in silence. Hollywood quickly noticed him, but Clarence refused many early offers because he preferred the honesty of the stage. This decision, to turn down money in favor of meaningful work, set the tone for his entire career and added to his reputation as someone who could not be controlled by the industry. Clarence's big break came in 1968 when he was cast as Lincoln Link Hayes on the Mod Squad. This role made history, as he became the first black actor to lead a primetime cop drama. The show's tagline, "One black, one white, one blonde," was designed to show diversity, but Clarence brought something more than just representation. He brought authenticity. Unlike other black characters on TV at the time, he refused to smile just to be accepted. He played his role with seriousness, intensity, and honesty, which gave the character depth. Producers were nervous that audiences in the South might not accept a strong black lead. But Clarence's performance proved them wrong. Millions tuned in, and he became a cultural icon. His afro became a symbol of pride and rebellion, inspiring young viewers across America. But behind the scenes, his honesty sometimes created tension. He demanded that the show reflect real issues, like police corruption, even when the network wanted to avoid controversy. In one famous moment, he insisted on keeping a storyline about a cop stealing heroin. When executives tried to cut it, he threatened to leave the show. His determination forced the network to broadcast the truth. And while it angered some police unions, it also won critical praise. Co-stars sometimes felt overshadowed by his power on screen, and there were real conflicts during filming. Yet, his presence gave the show an authenticity that no one else could have delivered. Hollywood began to realize that Clarence Williams III was not just another actor, he was a force who demanded respect. After the Mod Squad ended in 1973, Clarence faced a wave of offers from Hollywood. The new trend at the time was blaxploitation films, low-budget movies filled with guns, gangsters, and stereotypes. Many black actors embraced them because they offered money and visibility, but Clarence refused. He turned down at least 8 major roles between 1973 and 1976, rejecting offers that could have made him millions. Instead, he continued to act in small theater productions that paid only a fraction of what he was offered. Critics and fellow actors were divided about his decision. Some admired his principles, while others thought he was arrogant for rejecting opportunities that had opened doors for many black performers. But Clarence believed that playing one-dimensional characters would destroy his integrity as an artist. He said he didn't want to be a gun in a trench coat. He wanted to be something real. This refusal made him both respected and feared in Hollywood. Studios knew he could not be bought or manipulated, and that independence made him unpredictable. For more than a decade, he worked mostly in theater, proving his loyalty to art rather than fame. While others gained wealth, Clarence carried himself with quiet dignity, building a reputation as one of the few actors in Hollywood who valued truth above everything else. In 1984, Clarence Williams III took on a role that would forever cement his place in pop culture. He was cast as Prince's troubled father in the film Purple Rain. The movie was already expected to be unusual, blending music with drama, but Clarence's performance added a layer of emotional weight that surprised audiences. He played a man drowning in his own failures, a father whose abuse and pain were etched into his son's music. For many viewers, it was the first time they had seen Clarence since the Mod Squad, and his transformation shocked them. Gone was the cool young cop with the afro. In his place stood a haunted, broken figure who seemed almost too real. Clarence did not simply act the part, he embodied it. His eyes told a story of regret and inner torment, and critics praised his ability to make even small scenes unforgettable. Prince himself later admitted that Clarence gave the movie a level of seriousness it might not have had otherwise. While the film was a showcase for Prince's music, Clarence's portrayal of the father made the story personal, painful, and unforgettable. This performance introduced him to a new generation of fans, many of whom had never watched the Mod Squad. Once again, his intensity left a mark. Hollywood producers began calling him for darker, more complex roles, characters who carried secrets, pain, and power. Unlike many actors, Clarence did not fear being typecast. He welcomed the chance to play complicated men, even if they frightened the audience. One of the most memorable films of Clarence's later career came in 1995, when he starred in Tales from the Hood, a horror anthology that mixed social commentary with supernatural storytelling. Clarence played Mr. Sims, the eerie funeral director who introduces the movie's twisted tales. With his sharp expressions, unsettling laugh, and commanding presence, he turned what could have been a campy role into something legendary. Viewers described him as terrifying, yet magnetic. Young audiences who had never heard of the Mod Squad were suddenly captivated by this older man whose performance could still dominate the screen. Critics later said that Clarence's role as Mr. Sims made the movie a cult classic, because his energy tied all the stories together. The film itself was unusual for its time. It tackled racism, police brutality, domestic violence, and gang culture through horror, making it both entertaining and socially important. Clarence understood that horror could carry truth, and he gave his lines a weight that made the audience uneasy. Many fans admitted that even years later, his chilling voice in the funeral parlor stayed in their minds. Once again, Hollywood saw that Clarence Williams III had a unique gift. He could turn fear into art. Unlike other actors, he never played fear for laughs. He made it serious, intense, and unforgettable. This role added to his reputation as someone Hollywood both admired and quietly feared, because he reminded them of the truths they often tried to avoid. As the years passed, Clarence continued to appear in films and television, but he always stayed selective. He played memorable roles in projects like American Gangster, The Butler, and Half-Baked, where his comedic timing surprised those who thought he could only play serious characters. Yet, no matter the role, he carried the same intensity. Directors often said that Clarence never walked onto a set unprepared. He studied his characters deeply, asking questions about their history, their pain, and their hidden truths. Younger actors admired him, even if they sometimes felt nervous around his seriousness. Denzel Washington once commented that Clarence carried himself like a man who had already lived 100 lives, and that wisdom showed in his work. But Clarence also lived with a sense of mystery. He rarely gave interviews, and when he did, his answers were brief and carefully chosen. He avoided Hollywood parties, red carpets, and publicity events. To him, acting was not about fame, it was about truth. This attitude set him apart in an industry where most people chased attention. Some executives avoided hiring him because they felt he was too difficult, too independent, or too intense. Others admired his refusal to compromise and sought him out for exactly that reason. His career may not have been filled with blockbuster hits, but it was filled with respect. Each role, whether big or small, carried his unmistakable signature: honesty, intensity, and integrity. In the final years of his life, Clarence Williams III remained private. Unlike many actors of his generation, he did not spend time giving interviews about his past roles or trying to reinvent himself for the modern era. He chose silence. Even when he was diagnosed with colon cancer, he told almost no one outside his closest circle. For a man who had lived much of his life surrounded by death, perhaps he saw his own illness as something natural, not to be feared or discussed. On June 4, 2021, Clarence passed away at the age of 81. Fans were shocked, not only because many had no idea he was sick, but also because he had stayed so hidden in his later years. The news spread quickly, and tributes poured in from fellow actors, musicians, and fans who remembered how deeply his performances had touched them. Many pointed out that his life had come full circle from a boy raised among coffins in a Harlem funeral home to an actor who made audiences confront death, fear, and truth through his art. Even in his passing, Clarence Williams III remained a mystery. He left behind no scandals, no endless interviews, no overexposed legacy, only the memory of a man who acted with integrity and lived on his own terms. Looking back, it is clear why Clarence Williams III was both respected and feared in Hollywood. He was respected because of his talent, his discipline, and his refusal to sell out. At a time when many actors accepted roles that reinforced harmful stereotypes, Clarence said no, even if it meant losing money or fame. That kind of independence is rare in Hollywood, where most careers are shaped by compromise. But he was also feared. Producers feared hiring an actor who could not be controlled, who might demand truth in the script, or who might overshadow others. With his intensity, co-stars sometimes feared sharing the screen with him because his presence could dominate a scene without effort. Audiences feared him in roles like Mr. Sims in Tales from the Hood, because he could channel darkness in a way that felt real. Yet, at the same time, people admired him for all those reasons. His legacy is not measured in box office numbers, but in impact. He showed that an actor could choose principle over